With the release of Batman Arkham and Marvel's Spider-Man, there's been one question on people's minds. What is the greatest superhero game of all time? Now, I'm going to make this quick, get this out of the way at the beginning. I think Spider-Man has a better traversal and a better story, significantly better. And Arkham has significantly better stealth and boss fights. But that's not what the video is going to be about here. This video is going to be mostly about the combat, because the games are, I'd say, the stealth and the boss fights and the story and the traversal, those just about match each other. But the deciding factor of what's going to be better comes down to the combat. So what I'm going to be doing is going over the pros and cons of each combat. I'm going to do Arkham first and then Spider-Man in a few minutes. And we're going to get into what's good and what's bad about the combat system and figure out which one's better. So let's start right up. I'm going to do a pro and then a con and just alternate as we go. First good thing about Arkham, I'll start with the pro. It's got a lot of situational events. So there's a lot of interesting things that can happen in Arkham, like when a guy runs at you and you can throw a battering at him. Or if a guy grabs you, you have to spam square to break out. Things like that. Especially, my favorite is when you get into a beatdown, you start beating down a guy, and then you have to keep on countering and continuing the beatdown. It's just incredibly intense and a lot of fun. First con for Arkham is going to be that the spam and counter argument. So when people bring up Arkham versus Spider-Man, a lot of the arguments against Batman are that you can just spam counter and beat most fights. And while I usually disagree with this, it is definitely, especially for Arkham Asylum, Summer City, it is very much true for the first half of the game. You can kind of just spam counter and beat half of the fights. Even though that's not the fun way to do it, that is a possibility. That's the first con. Another pro for Arkham is that your combo is more prevalent, I'd say. So what that means is that if your combo breaks, then it is limiting your options more. Now that sounds like a bit of a con, but it really adds to the sort of intensity of the game when you're on a really high combo and you're not losing it. And it's something that Spider-Man could carry over, but I'm going to get into that in a couple minutes. Next thing about Arkham Combat is that you have to start a combo in order to start free flowing. So right at the beginning, before you get into a combo, it's not always super fluid. And I'm just going to roll through the last two real quick. Arkham has a great enemy variety. The enemies force you to play a lot differently. And that's the pro. And the last con is that sometimes you have so many special combo moves that you kind of get overwhelmed and you don't know what to do. So moving on with Spider-Man, the first pro I would give it is that the combo system is less restrictive. Now that is something, the Arkham games, the combo is building up and it's giving you a great amount of dopamine when you're getting it high, but the Spider-Man, it's kind of an equalizer. It's a positive and a negative. You're always at your highest in Spider-Man, and it is kind of great knowing that you don't, losing a combo doesn't really have much significance. It's not going to affect you, and there's more interesting fights in Spider-Man since you can take damage. It looks more like a fight in a movie where Spider-Man's actually fighting and trading blows, and in Arkham it's usually you're hitting everyone and no one's hitting you. So it's more cinematic. First con for Spider-Man, though, is exactly that, cinematic. The finishers are a little too cinematic, if you know what I mean. They kind of become cutscenes. What I mean by that is you're in the middle of a fight, and then there's this one finisher where you, like, get on a dude and spin around in Black Widow style, like that, and it is very kind of interrupting. You know, you feel like your gameplay is getting interrupted with a lot of cutscenes. That can sometimes be annoying. Next pro for Spider-Man is you have a great lot of move variety. Now, I'm not just talking about the suit powers and the gadgets. That's a lot right there. But there's also a lot of environmental things you can do besides just the finishers. There's my favorite, where you jump up in the air with a charge jump and then slam down. There's the dodge off a wall. There's a lot of different attacks you can do. You're never doing the same thing for too long. And similar to the countering argument with Arkham, the next con for Spider-Man is going to be that if you don't want to use all those moves, you kind of can just hit and dodge, use square and circle, and that's all you can get off with. And the game gets really repetitive that way. Just you have to be very creative while you're playing this game, or you'll end up doing the same takedowns over and over again. So that is one thing that could be better, is that it doesn't entirely force you to be creative, but it is fun when you are. Another pro is that there are tons of ways to dodge in this game. You've got the air dodge, the perfect dodge, the off-the-wall dodge, regular dodge, dodge under. There's just a lot of different things you can do with the dodge, and it's a lot more variety than just the one single counter and maybe a batarang. But there's definitely the leap off as well. That's a lot of different variety with your dodging. And the final con I'd say for Spider-Man is that sometimes the gadgets are a little too overpowered. I mean, they are great, a lot of fun to use, but if you are just spamming them, then they kind of make the game too easy, and I feel like they could have been balanced better, so that way you don't just walk into a fight and use all your gadgets and not even have to hit anyone. So overall, Batman Arkham is a much more restrictive, much more tightly focused game when it comes to the combat, and Spider-Man PS4 is a much freer game. You have a lot of choice, a lot of moves to use, and they just give you a bunch of enemies to hit and they say go at it. Overall, I think personally I would prefer Arkham, because Spider-Man's combat is kind of inconsistent in a way. There are times when you're playing it and it is exhilarating, much more fun than Arkham, but a lot of the time it is also kind of less fun, because it's not, the enemy types aren't forcing you to play it in the most fun way every time, so you're not 100% of the time you're playing Spider-Man PS4, you are not at your most fun that you could be having. Where Arkham gives you a more consistent experience, you're going to have a great amount of fun each fight, and Spider-Man's a little more variable. But leave a comment below, tell me what you think. It's very, very close. Honestly, they are both at least 9s out of 10s. So, that was it for this one, and I'll see you next time.